taken some time off since the last RC video. Since then I have this axial SCX10 that I bought, and been slowly upgrading that. It should turn out pretty cool. But the thing I've been looking at lately is my Gen 7 and how I built this plate for it on the front. And I'm realizing that that is part of why this is so good, because it's a ramp, and if an obstacle hits this, it can actually ramp up that rather than hitting the front of the diff cover and stopping. So I thought that'd be kind of a nice thing to have on my TRX. So I'll show you what I've done with that. For viewers that have watched my channel for a while, you've all seen my TRX Sport slowly become my Class 1 competition crawler. It has 2 wins on it this year already. And I've done a little bit of work again. I've added a little more brass to the front. I'll show you that here. And what I've added today is the brass steering link mounts to the back here, but as you can see, it's pretty brassed out. I actually have the steering servo forward mounted, so nothing on this is going to be like a stock rig. Also, one of the things that I've done is, and I don't recommend this for anyone else because it probably won't work for you, but if you look at my steering linkages, they're backwards. This one used to attach up here, and this one attached here, and this is here. But I decided that I would raise this whole system up above the axle so nothing ever would hit that again. And in the process of doing so, these links now have to cross each other, which is a little bit of a problem. Also, I used a steering servo that is kind of a drop arm thing that actually brings it down before going back. So I've got a drop servo arm here, and in order to do that, I had to be very bad to this thing. I actually notched the steering linkage here to clear the end link. And one other thing I've done is I've notched this part here, because when the linkage goes full passenger, this hits that now. So I notched the back of this link as well. I don't care. I don't recommend it for anyone else, but it does get that up out of the way. It gives a little bit straighter push with this drop servo that I had before, and a drop servo horn actually. But everything is up high. Well, in the process of doing that, I was noticing that I have a very flat front on this diff cover. These are flat surfaces as well, but they're close to the wheel, so it probably doesn't matter as much as far as going out over obstacles. But with this flat surface now exposed with all my linkage up high, which I like, but again, I don't recommend it because you got to chew up some of your linkage to make everything happy, so don't do it. But it's clear up all the way. Anyway, what I'm going to do is build a ramped skid plate here, so that if an obstacle comes towards this diff cover, it does not hit it directly, but yet will ramp over it. So I'm building a ramped skid plate here, and it basically will act like the front of a metal wheel that it's basically a skid plate. You know, it's going to be able to essentially sled over an obstacle rather than have the obstacle strike it directly and stop the vehicle. So I got some scrap metal from work, and I'm in the process of cutting that. But what I've done is I've kind of determined the shape of it, how I want it to go in here. I'm going to use these 2 screws as the mount point for it. It's going to have a bend here, and it's just going to come back and cover the front of this. So it'll provide a ramp surface, and I anticipate this thing being able to slide over an obstacle that formerly would have struck this and stopped. I created a template for the metal piece, which I've misplaced somehow. Not sure how I did that, but this is just a piece of sheet metal, and I think it used to be part of Hyundai, which fine, I don't care. It's free. So I have this tool here that I'm I'm going to cut this exact shape out and trace around it. I wish I could find that template because it has the position of the screw holes. One of the things I really like about this tool is it makes edges that aren't sharp. So you don't have to file them or anything. They're not sharp at all. So I'm going to find my template that I made and then drill 2 screw holes here that are corresponding to the ones that are on the bottom of that servo mount that I have that's brass. And then I'll put the appropriate bends in this, and then I'm going to strip the paint off the back. I might let nature strip the paint out the front as I drive it. Why not? Might be kind of cool. But anyway, this will eventually go silver. And on the back, I'm going to reinforce it with a coat hanger. And actually, I'm going to have to strip the whole thing, because when I do that, I'm going to have to get the whole thing hot, because I'm going to braze in some metal that's going to make this thing stiff. Turns out I'd taken my template inside. So what I'm going to do is tape this together, and then I'm going to take this to my drill press and drill those 2 holes out, and that way I have them in the exact place they need to be. Also, I'll leave this taped together because that fold in the paper is where I want the bend to be on this piece of metal. Alright, I've got that taped on, and now I just got to drill the holes. This is my drill press, and naturally I have some of the safety features disabled, because why would I not? And I'm going to throw a board on here, because when I drill here, I don't want to dimple the metal, and this probably is not the proper drill bit to be using for this, but it's the one I had and it's the right size. So I'm going to wear safety glasses, and if it blows apart, so be it. Whenever I start drilling a hole, I like to position the drill press and the material before I turn it on, because it's much easier and you don't make mistakes as easily that way. Also, I've got a little too much drill bit sticking out from there, so I'm going to shove that up in, because less drill bit exposed means less drill bit bending as you're drilling. Pretty decent. Also, I don't use gloves when I use a drill press, because I would rather get cut than stuck in a spinning tool that would potentially rip a finger or arm off. Now I've got both holes exactly where I need them to be, and they should be the right size. Maybe this was the right drill bit after all, but it worked really good on metal. I don't know if it was the right one or not, but or what it's intended for. It's a little bit more of a coarse thread than I'm used to seeing, but that's okay. Worked great. And the next thing I need to do is make that fold in the metal. And I have a vise here. Since I don't have a metal brake, I'm just going to line it up and bend it off of this. It's nearly as wide as the piece of metal that I'm going to be folding, so I'm going to call it good. And I want to bend it this way, because that's the dull side. This is the little bit sharper side, and I want that on the back. More rounded side goes on the front, and this cut edge. So I'll get this lined up. I'm going to pause the camera and do the bend. Alright, I've got this piece of metal now ready to bend in the vise, and it's pretty straight. I'm using the TLAR method, which stands for that looks about right, and I'm just going to put the bend in it so that it can come off of the front of the truck where I'm screwing it in. So that's the first bend. I'll get my TRX and just sort of look at how it lines up with this, but that is basically the rough shape that I need it to be in now. So I've got a bent piece of metal. This will bolt onto the bottom of the truck and be the ramp surface that it will need in order to slide up and over obstacles rather than have them hit the dip and stop the truck. I'm going to put some tapered bends in it on the corner here, from this corner back to this line, and from this corner back to here. And what that will do is give it a little bit of rigidity in the sheet metal itself, and then after that I'll do some metal reinforcing with hanger rod. For the side wings, I'm just using a pair of pliers and lining up the nose and just bending this by hand. Also, what I'm going to do is put a slight notch right here in the corner, and then a notch right here in this corner, and then I can roll this whole front nose over a bit. You don't want this to be a sharp edge. This is the piece as I have it right now, and it's been bent into the general shape that I want it to be. It's close to symmetrical, and I just need to strip the paint off of it, put some reinforcing bar across here so that it doesn't fold when I try to drive it, and then make sure this angle here is right and bolt it onto the truck. The skid plate is starting to take shape, and that paint that they put on Hyundais is super tough. I can't even hardly get that off of the wire wheel. But what I'm going to do is I cleared around the edges here, around this perimeter of all these bends, and I had to get that bare metal because I'm going to bend a wire, actually a bicycle spoke, and solder that in, and that'll make the whole thing rigid. In the interest of making this video a little bit shorter, what I've done is I've taken the metal off of the inside of this shape, and what I'm going to do is use this bicycle spoke that I have bent appropriately that will now fit inside of this area. I need to shorten this a little bit just so that it won't get in the way when I bolt this back onto the bottom of the truck. And I'll do that real quick, and then I'm going to use a torch to basically solder this piece in, and it'll be a very rigid structure for backing this skid plate. Alright, I had to take a break there for a couple hours because I did not have a nozzle for my propane torch, so I also had to take my new puppy for a walk. So she's pretty awesome. Her name's Emmy, and she's a great dog. She's from the Animal Rescue League of Iowa, and she's afraid of everything. So we're trying to get her not afraid of everything. This is soldering paste, and what I'm doing is I'm putting that on the metal that I'm going to join this bicycle spoke that has been bent with. So I'm going to put this soldering paste on it. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't, I have different type. So this is going to fit right there in the slot. And let me get my hands wiped here. Hope this stuff works. Water soluble flux. So it says carefully read the safety instructions. Well, I didn't, so I'll bet I live. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is hold this with a pair of pliers because I'm about to make it incredibly hot, and I'm going to float a bunch of solder in there and make these two pieces one piece. And then not only will the folds in the structure of the panel that I made give it rigidity, but this bar inside will give it extra. So it should be pretty good. This is the back side with the bike spoke soldered to it. It's not the best job. I may do it again later if it pops off, but I think it'll hold. It's not great, but it'll do. It'll do for now anyway. Now I'm going to hit the other side with a wire wheel on my Dremel, and it should be pretty. This is the finished product for something that started off as scrap metal that was cut off of a Hyundai. It's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. It's got some nice radiuses on it that aren't going to catch rocks or ledges or anything, and they'll slide right past. And I'm really happy with the way that turned out. The Hyundai paint was almost impossible to get off. It was unbelievably strong, and I ended up basically burning it off and then hitting it with a wire wheel on my drill. So the last thing to do is go ahead and install this on the truck, and I'll do some testing later on. What do you guys think of that? That is cool. That is actually a usable ramp that if I come up to an obstacle, this basically is carrying its own ramp with it, and it'll ramp it right over the diff. So I may end up back bracing that somehow at some point, but I'm going to drive it and just see how it works. But right now it has no clearance issues. Everything passes nicely, and I can't wait to take this out and try it. Might be a few days before I get a chance to do that, but I am really happy with how that turned out. Not bad for a piece of scrap metal that was in the scrap bin. Bottom is rounded so it'll slide over rocks. Has a nice finish, and it's steel, so it may rust, but I can hit it with another wire wheel and it'll look just like this again. The one on my Red Cat hasn't changed, so I don't anticipate it having any problems. But that's pretty cool. Super happy with how that turned out.